Minimum salaries for players in the top two tiers of professional women's football in England are being introduced for the first time this season. WSL football haven't disclosed what the minimum level will be, but it has been described as a full-time wage. Joining me to discuss this news is former WSL striker and talkSPORT's England correspondent at the Euro 2025 competition, Courtney Sweetman-Kirk. Courtney, you played in the top league, so what has this revelation meant to you?
Yeah, look, I think it's huge because even in the top league, I think I say quite fortunate, but again, I think it's interesting, isn't it? The wording that we use in women's sports sometimes saying we're fortunate to actually get a decent wage. So, as I say, the clubs that I was at, it was, we were looked after quite well, but I know full well, even now, after me retiring, there's instances where, girls aren't really earning a wage that's suitable to live on. And I think obviously in terms of the way it's been made through sort of UK employment law and the certain hours of contact time, and then you're paid sort of your minimum wage at least for that. But you've got to remember sort of when you're within that circle and you maybe the contact time is 16, 20 hours. But realistically, if you're a full-time professional, you've not then got time to go elsewhere and make your wages up. So I think it's really important that it's a wage where you can focus purely on your football, not have to think about anything else, not have to worry about your bills and that sort of stuff, and purely focus on being the best footballer you can be.
Do you find it kind of, I guess, for lack of a better word, like dehumanizing to hear people debate whether women should be played or paid to play football?
Yeah, of course, because you're doing a job that one you love, and I think sometimes that's a little bit taken advantage of. Because you love it, you probably will do it for less. But yeah, to say that because you're a female or because you're gender, you don't deserve to be paid to play football. It's not a nice thing to hear. And I will play the devil's advocate on the other side that it's difficult because it's a business. So I understand that some of the clubs should and can do better. And I think that's improving now in terms of like a business sense, money coming in and money going out and not having to solely rely on the men's sides. And I think obviously, especially in the WSL, that's getting a lot better now. And the income generation, I think Arsenal's a fantastic one to look at in terms of playing at the Emirates now and getting big crowds week in, week out and generating that income both through match day experience. And obviously the commercial benefits are now so big that clubs are working really hard. So I do appreciate that they have work to do as well.
And you were out for talkSPORT out in Switzerland for the Women's Euros in 2025, and you spoke to the Prime Minister about the investment that was needed in women's football. Has the Lioness success over the last few years kind of given the powers that be, I suppose, the nudge to kind of get this over the line?
Yeah, I hope so. And yeah, interviewing the Prime Minister definitely wasn't on my 2025 bingo card, but there we are.
Yeah.
It was a cool experience. But yeah, I mean, the fact that it's shown not just obviously in the UK with the viewing figures, but over in Switzerland as well and around Europe how well the competition did, and especially I think 2025 was massive again. But the first time we won it, I think obviously back at home was that big one that really pushed everything forward. So to continue that, I think was really important because I think we've seen in previous years of the WSL when a major tournament comes around, it's great. And then there's a bit of an uptake afterwards in terms of, people wanting to come and watch the games and girls wanting to get involved. And then that maybe drops off again. But as I say, I think winning it at Wembley was the push that we really needed to take it forward. And again, now doing it again in Switzerland. So I think this is the thing. This is what people want to see. Obviously, it's winning, isn't it? And a good standard of competition. Again, I think the WSL is getting better and better at that. But Chelsea consistently winning. Yes, they deserve to do it. But for me personally, the WSL needs to be more competitive for people to watch it more and have more of a jeopardy. And that isn't just specific to women's sport in the WSL. We've seen it year in, year out, haven't we? Recently, obviously with Man City and then Liverpool coming back into it and winning the Premier League. So I think that when it's more competitive and you don't really know the result and which way it's going to go, then that's when more people will continue to watch when it's not just a foregone conclusion.
Yeah, and obviously in the US, the NWSL has already introduced minimum salaries, and a lot of English players will go and play there instead. Do you think that this will mean that less players will head to the US? Because at the moment, their current minimum salary is 48.5 grand a year, but their aim is to raise it to 82.5 by the end of 2030. So do you think we'll still see players leaving the UK to go play in the NWSL?
Very potentially, but maybe less. You're right, because in terms of then, if we aren't aware, I believe, of what the actual finances are at the moment. That's due to be announced a little bit later on down the line. But I think it's a strange one in America, because I think that's always seen as a little bit of the gold standard from our perspective in the UK, because the league has been so strong for such a long time and it's been so popular. And obviously America have been so successful internationally, but obviously with the fact, again, as I keep saying it for the Lionesses, back-to-back Euros winners, hopefully we can obviously go on better and go and win a World Cup as well, and that will always help. But I think that the competitiveness rather of the WSL is helping. I think you're seeing that with the transfers that we're getting coming in of late over the last couple of years, the likes of obviously Naomi Gurma and a big massive fee for Olivia Smith. It was world record at the time. That looks like it's potentially going to be broken and stuff like that. So I think players will still leave, because I think America is also one of those sort of places where it's a nice place to live potentially, depending on where you are. And I think there's that lifestyle thing. If you are English and you've always been here, then you might want to go to different places and experience different football, a different way of life. But I do think that minimum salary will be a big thing for players to stay in the WSL.
So, along with this whole plan, they also have announced that Nike are providing football boots and goalkeeper gloves to all players in both leagues who don't already have endorsement deals. What do you think this would mean for the lower tier teams and also just players who grew up in kind of low income backgrounds that are now seeing that it's possible for them to play professional football?
Yeah, I think it's huge in the fact that we're not in a position where most players, still don't have boot deals. I think when you think about men's professional football, and I don't like to compare because I think they're games by themselves. But when you're looking at commercial and the revenue, and there's players, sort of young boys going in at under 10s that already have a boot deal. So the fact that professional footballers, female footballers, some of them don't have it, I think it's one of those things where it needs to be looked at, and it obviously has been, and that's brilliant. So for, like you say, especially for lower down the tiers, hopefully I think that I would like that to trickle down, because we're talking about obviously WSL and WSL2 at the moment, but I always talk about the further pyramid as well. And we're still in a position where the further pyramid is struggling in certain aspects, whether that be medical is the big thing for me. I think, when players are doing ACLs and not getting support and not looked after properly, I think that's really important. But as you say, boot deals and stuff like that, where it's obviously vital for players to be able to play. So just having that knowledge that you don't have to pay, £200-300 for a pair of boots will help a lot of players as well.
When you were growing up and first getting involved in football, did you find a lot of people around you were in this position where they couldn't kind of get through the financial barrier even just to play?
Yeah, definitely. And I think for me, is quite fortunate. I had a really good sort of group of people around me, so I could get to training and things like that. But it was definitely everyone sort of sticking together, and everyone would get together and maybe club in with lifts and share and stuff like that. So I think as it's progressed, and it was going right back to sort of the academy structure when I was smaller, it was the centre of excellence, and it was I think it was a lot easier to access that academy structure, whereas when it changed to the regional talent clubs, and yes, it was fantastic because it was meant to be gave you a better standard of coaching, but regional probably says it in the name. I think there were less of these regional talent clubs. So for young players that didn't have the finances, or maybe had a parent that didn't drive, I think we've lost a lot of players in recent years as well. So I think that financial backing, that socioeconomic status, and looking at different incomes and different backgrounds to make sure that we're not losing young girls at a young age because of those factors. I think that's really important and something that's quite close to my heart.
A big thank you to Courtney, and we will keep an eye on this story and bring you all of the latest news in the women's game across this season, which kicks off this weekend. Subscribe to talkSPORT's women's football channel on all social media platforms to keep up to date.